This is our Ask the Doctor series, which is presented by the All African Peoples Development and Empowerment Project, or APDEP for short. Again, my name is Dr. Aisha Fields, and I am the International Director of APDEP, which is an African community-led development organization which was established by the African People's Socialist Party in 2007. And APDEP has the mission to win African people around the world to contribute our skills towards building African community-led development programs in the areas of agriculture, education, healthcare, disaster preparedness, and emergency response. APDEP was formed to bring Africa's skills to the African Revolution and forward into a united, liberated Africa. Guided by the theory of African internationalism, APDEP members recognize the unity of all African people. We reject all false physical and mental borders that would seek to separate African people from each other and from our national homeland, Africa. APDEP members recognize that our primary contradiction as a people is political. That contradiction is not racism or the ideas in the minds of white people. It isn't bad governance or a lack of education. It is colonialism. African people, no matter where we are located, exist as a colonized or dominated people. Now, this means that every aspect of our lives, our politics, economics, health, and other areas are all controlled by a foreign and alien state power, by white power, even if it sometimes shows up in a black face. And just as Africa's mineral and other natural resources are used to build the schools, the hospitals, the homes, the medicines, and other things needed to create and sustain a high quality of life for the white world, Africa's human resources have been used to do the same. And this is not a new phenomenon. African people who became enslaved in the Americas were not just exploited for our labor, but our skills. Our kidnapped and enslaved African ancestors were agriculturalists, teachers, artists, healers, architects, and more. And just as Africa's gold, diamonds, coltan, cocoa, fertile farmland, and other resources must be wrested from our enemies, so must our skills. The Neo-Colonial African Union estimates that about 70,000 skilled professionals leave Africa each year, dramatically impacting public service delivery, especially in the health sector. For many African countries, there are more doctors and health practitioners practicing in the US or the UK than in their country of birth or training. More than 6,700 Africans born in Nigeria work in the UK National Health Service. Twice as many Kenyan-born doctors work in imperialist centers than in Kenya itself. It's clear that the colonizer nation has benefited greatly from the knowledge and expertise of many Africans who migrate for economic opportunities that don't exist on the continent itself due to the imposition of neo-colonial leadership on our continent. And even when African people who are born in the United States or who have immigrated to imperialist centers like the United States or Europe, when they do get jobs, they aren't jobs that work to solve the problems of African people living there. This is because African people in the United States, Europe, Canada, and other places exist as an internal colony. There is quality housing, food, and healthcare for the colonizer population, and poverty, sickness, and disease for the masses of colonized African people living there. So no matter where Africa's skills end up, they rarely, if ever, serve Africa and African people. Given the reality of our colonial conditions, African people cannot afford to continue to turn our skills over to our oppressors. We must have an all hands on deck approach to reverse the flow of our skills back to the genuine development of Africa and African people. And there is no higher expression of the consolidated interests of African people than that which is forwarded by the African Revolution, which is led by the African People's Socialist Party. So just to say that APDEP was created by the party as our vehicle through which Africans with specialized skills can stop simply selling them to the highest imperialist bidder and instead bring them back home and into the process that will free our people from the abusive colonial relationship that has been imposed on us for more than 600 years. Over the years, APDEP has built a variety of dual power programs that not only help to improve our immediate material conditions as a people, but that give us a growing independent capacity to meet our own needs as we work to negate the role that the colonial state plays in our lives. We built rainwater harvesting systems, trained hundreds of community health workers, built infant and maternal health centers, a variety of youth and adult educational programs, vocational school, nursery school, community farms, gardens, garden collectives, and more. Today's webinar is the 11th in our monthly Ask the Doctor series, where we have an opportunity to learn from African professionals, intellectuals, and revolutionary organizers about the issues confronting the African nation and what we must do to get organized to solve those problems. Today's topic is the role of African intellectuals in the world. Our conversation will reveal a sharp African internationalist criticism of African intellectuals, many of whom have openly sided with the colonizers' continued domination of our land and resources, and call on those who can to reject the colonial domination of our people in practice by taking the stand that our skills belong to our people and our righteous struggle for self-government. We will show you how this can be done by joining the international Uhuru movement under the leadership of the advanced detachment of the African working class, the African People's Socialist Party. If you haven't already submitted your questions for our panelists, please do so in the comments section or email us at info@developmentforafrica.org. As a reminder, our Ask the Doctor series is a fundraiser that supports our Project Black Ankh telehealth program. We want to raise $300 towards the work of this program, which is APDEP's self-determining global healthcare response to the coronavirus, offering free COVID-19 related healthcare advice to the African community worldwide. However, you can also support APDEP by joining. If you are a student who's listening, we have memberships that start as low as $10 a year. Please see the comments for information on how to join or donate, or visit developmentforafrica.org/donate or developmentforafrica.org/membership to join. So now I'd like to take a moment to introduce our special guests, who we are very excited to have join us today. First, I would like to introduce Lazy Kinshasa, who is the Secretary General of the African Socialist International, the worldwide organization of African People's Socialist Parties located in countries throughout North America, Africa, Europe, and the Caribbean, fighting for the total liberation and unification of Africa and African people everywhere. Born in Kinshasa in Congo, Is Sheila Lazy currently organizes from his base in London, England. Since the 1980s, Is Sheila Lazy has organized African people extensively throughout Europe and Africa, where he has built the African working class-led movement for African liberation. Secretary General Lazy has written numerous articles and spoken extensively around the world. As a result of his brilliant and dynamic presentations, which break down the basic revolutionary principles of African internationalism in such a clear way, Is Sheila Lazy has come to be known as Mwalimu, or teacher in Swahili. We welcome you to our program and are so honored to have you with us today, Secretary General Lazy Kinshasa. And I also want to say that the basis of this discussion was an article that was written many years back by Secretary General Lazy on the role of African intellectuals in the world. So welcome, Secretary General of the African Socialist International, Lazy Kinshasa.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this important webinar. And I also like to take this opportunity to salute all the comrades in APDEP for doing so much work to organize this webinar. And I'm just so excited to be part of this program, and I can't wait, at the start.
Uhuru. So next we have Dr. Matsumela Odom. Dr. Matsumela Odom is a Black Studies educator at the San Diego State and other schools, including UC San Diego City College, and San Diego Mesa College. Dr. Odom has published numerous articles on the history of Black people throughout Southern California, analyzing the civil rights and Black power movements, police brutality, segregation, the crack cocaine epidemic, hip hop music, white hate groups, and Black resistance rebellions. Dr. Odom is the International Vice President of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. And we really want to welcome you, and so excited to have you be a part of our program, Comrade Dr. Matsumela Odom. Uhuru, Dr. Odom.
Hey, who everybody? Thanks for having me. I think this is very vital conversation. Conversation that I wish, in certain ways I would have had when I was a young person in college and stuff like that. So I'm just very excited to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Odom. Is Sheila Lazy. So again, I want to thank you both for joining us today for what I know is going to be a very timely and important discussion. And we're going to begin with Secretary General Lazy Kinshasa, who's going to give us a presentation on the critical role of African intellectuals in the world. So I'm going to turn it over for a presentation by Secretary General Lazy Kinshasa. Uhuru.
Dr. Aisha, once again, thank you for having me here. And I just want to salute our Chairman of Matsumela for laying out for all of us, basically, the strategy to work to unite the African nation to complete the revolution of the 60s. As everyone knows, we are not free yet. And that's the way I would like to start, particularly for students, African students, young people. The tendency is to think I do what I want to do. I do as as I like. No, Africans are not free. This has to inform everything we do. African continent is not free. Black people, anywhere we live on a planet, we are not free. This has to be really clear. Otherwise, we get confused. We will be acting as the oppressors. No, we are not free at all. It's a myth to think that Africa is a free continent. And African students need to know one thing. You can't be a student in general, like white students, like Japanese students or Chinese students or French students. You just can't be a student in general. You have to be a student of struggle to free Black people. You have to be a Black Power student. You have to be an African internationalist student. As I said in the beginning, freedom has to be the starting point of everything we do. Doesn't matter what you study. It doesn't matter where you're coming from, where you're born, how you look like. As long as you're Black, as long as you're an African, the starting point has to be freedom of Black people. And we also have to just make sure that when I say you can't be a student just in general, because the white students are not students in general. So the Japanese or the Chinese or the Russians, they are not students in general. They have mandates to implement, to pursue. If you're a Chinese student, you know very well, if you're studying science, they want you to do how to understand how to carry out cyber war, how to do space war. They want you to do that. They want you to understand nanotechnology. So you're not just a Chinese student in general. You have a mandate from the Chinese government, from the Chinese society. And we African people do not have legitimate government anywhere. So we don't have a really legitimate mandate to carry for us to be free, because our organizations that used to organize Black people freedom, they've been destroyed a while ago. You know about Malcolm X, you know about Lumumba, Fred Hampton and son, killed, movement destroyed. So we, when I say we, me, Dr. Isha, Dr. Matsumela, and the others, we are part of a movement. We are part of a party that is carrying out the legitimate mandate of African nation. And we want African students to embrace, to join us in carrying out the mandate of our party, of our people, because we represent the best interests of the African nation. We represent the material interests of the African nation. And it's really fundamental for us. We know how important it is for students to know their past, to know their history. You have to know your history. That's true. you have to know that the calendar we're using today is our calendar. We made the calendar. The calendar we're using today, it was in use some 4,236 years before Christ. You need to know those things. You need to know that all things like the Greek civilization is a myth for simple reason. The Greek didn't even have a writing system. Their own alphabet is our alphabet, is ours. The paper, we invented the paper. You need to know those things, and so on. But what is really important is you have to be part of a movement to recapture our freedom, which means our future, so that everyone can be proud, can be happy to see life in a black skin. So nobody's depressed or powerless or demoralized and things like that. So you have to be part of that movement, not just to know your past, to know our past, but to recapture our future. Because if you don't have a future, it's not good enough just to know we were great in the past. It's not good enough. So you have to be a dynamic, a living part of a new movement we are building to recapture uh, our future. That's really fundamental. And when I said you can't be a student just in general, when I was at university, there was we were told all the time, we are not into the political parties and things like that. You have to be apolitical. That's not true. It's a lie. You look around you where you are in the United States or where I am in England, who rules these places? Here they will tell you some 60 or 70% of all the key positions in society, from the governments, in armed forces, the police, you name it, they come from the leading universities. Oxford University, Cambridge University, Imperial College University. And you're going to tell me those two universities are neutral, apolitical? They are not. They're not political. They train you to be leaders in colonial society. That's what they train them. So they're not apolitical. So African students cannot be political. To be political, it just means you agree with the status quo. You are satisfied. You are happy to see African nation, African people, black people being oppressed, being humiliated every day. So you can't be for that. So you have to be a well organized. You have to know what's going on. You have to know what the African People's Socialist Party is doing. You have to know what APDEP, the organization who is organizing this event, is doing. So you can be a living part of the struggle to change this world. That's what it means to be a student, to be intellectual, to be young, is to be involved in a movement to change the world. And you have to play a role in that. And this just some of the things we have to be really clear about. And when we say universities are not neutral places, you have to know most of the funding of those universities are colonial funds. Universities, they get the money from corporations or from even from the state. But the state and the corporations, they get the money from colonial domination of African and other colonized people in the world. So when you are in those universities, you have to be conscious that you are in environments that depend on sucking the blood of black people for those universities to receive the fund. Because remember, universities don't create the value in society; they are places of learning. And all these professors, they are well paid. All these laboratories are well funded. Where the money comes from? That's daily exploitation of the colonies. And you remember, African continent is a colony, it's a colonized country. And black people, wherever we are colonized people. That's why we are always poor. So when you're colonized, you cannot be you cannot have a decent life. You're always poor as a community, as a collective. Few of us, can have some good jobs, good paid, but generally speaking, the majority, overwhelming majority of our people will always be poor. And the reason they're being poor is because they will never pay them well enough so they can have it decently living. So all these monies, they go to fund the university. So you are dealing with a representative of the blood sucking system. You're not just in university because you are intelligent, it's true. You are smart, it's true. all that things. All those things are true. But university is a creation of development in society that has been given so much resources that they have to find new ways to exploit, to develop, to transform those resources so they can make modern products. And you have to know uh, uh, when you look at society as we're living today, where do you get most of the gold? Where do you get most of the platinum? Where you get most of the diamond, most of the coltan, most of the uranium, all those things you get them in Africa and throughout the colonized countries, but you get most of them from Africa. Things like platinum, coltan, cobalt. You can't make. You cannot make green cars, as they call it, clean cars, green car, based on electricity without cobalt. And most of cobalt, over 60%, is in Africa, in the Congo. Most of platinum you need is in Southern Africa, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. And basically, you just you just can't go around in this system without Africa. You have to be aware of it. Africa is the cornerstone of the world economy. Don't believe all this nonsense you see on the television. These bad films showing the bad situation. It's true, the situation is bad, but in reality, if you say the imperialism get out of Africa, they will fight you, and they will fight you to death. That's why France, United States, they are all digging in Africa, building more military bases, making it difficult for us to access our own resources. That's how significant Africa is. That's how significant your work is going to be. That's how significant your struggle, our struggle is going to be, because the world has to be free. But for the world has to be free, colonial capitalism has to be defeated in its most strategic part, which is on the African continent. And Black people around the world, and particularly Black students, have to play a key role in this struggle to build a new future, a new world. And so there are other things I would like to mention is that Africa needs, when I say Africa, I mean the African nation, Black people everywhere. We need a new cultural revolution, a new cultural, a new cultural revolutionary movement, and you have to be part of that movement. African students joining up, African students managing all kind of projects, bringing their skills to the community, bringing science to the community, to the African community everywhere. We have lively debates, discussions, understanding science, discussing, COVID-19. What's the truth about that? Discussing all other issues that the people need to know, so that our scientific and also technological, about scientific level is developed. Because at the moment, everything obscure, everything to put the veil on the brain and the eyes of the people is, most of them are unchallenged. You have all kind of opportunities, all kind of preachers, anything goes in the Black community. So, except science. So we need to bring science in our community. And the African student, since you are the ones who are in university grappling with all these new concepts, all these sophisticated concepts, the people need to know about it, because when you understand it and you come back to the community, you break them down. You make it understandable, digestible by the people, so they begin to understand our rights. So we need to be able to grow our own food. If we apply this kind of principle, yes, that's how you do it. We can fix all our old cars ourselves. If we have training on how to fix a car, all these students studying mechanics, they can give training. The same with computers. Everyone uses computers. Everyone uses electronic stuff. When it comes to fixing it, you don't see enough technicians in the Black community, but there's so many people in the community talented. If given some explanation, some training, they will get it. So we want to get this knowledge, the expertise you have in universities, bring them back. We talk about reparations. So you have to be in university, wage this struggle, with the white student, with the Chinese student, all of them, explain to them, win them to be in solidarity with African revolution. You go win them. You can't just say, "Oh yeah, I'm university. They love hip hop. Me too. You know, my brother is a rapper. So you have a good time." That's not enough. Being young means having a good time, but being young, it means preparing for the future. So you cannot allow everybody just to enjoy black culture without anything in return. And anything in return means they have to be in solidarity with our own agenda, our own programs. That's some of the things that we need to take to university. We have to define the debate. What is the debate in university? What the debate is going to be about university? This is the job of a young student, African student. They have to define what the debate should be. We will bring all the issues. We have massive imprisonment of Africans in the United States. Uh, the the chloridon is this product the French has used in the Martinique and Guadeloupe to pollute the river. Chlordecone. You go bring those things there, the genocide in the Congo. You go bring that university, the looting of Africa. You go bring that university. So you determine, you set the terms. What is the debate in a university, as opposed to going to university and finding out what everybody else is doing and you joining in, or allow the Democratic Party to come and define the debate and looking you up in the discussion. Is racism bad in the U.S. Or racism bad in France? How can we do? How can we defeat racism? Things like that. We don't want to wasting our time on discussions like racism. Everything has to do about power. You want to be students dealing with power. We have things like the debts. How can African students be in debt? When our labor build universities, when universities are funded with the money stolen from black people around the world, how can we be in debt? Most of the gold come from us. Most of the diamond come from us. You name it. All most of those resources come from us. How can you be in debt? We already paid for our studies 1,000 times. So all these are part of the struggle. So to be student, to be African student, is to be involved in the struggle, because there is not a way you can shape the future. There is not a way you can capture the future if you're not part of the struggle. And you have to privilege collective success. When you're smart as the African student, they will work on you. You are so different. You're so smart. We have some, careers laid out for you. They want to make you, take you to Wall Street, take you to laboratories to make submarines or aircraft, things like that. That isolate you from your people, from the community, from the struggles. That's no success. If it's a success, that's an imperialist success. Because all your skills, all your knowledge, everything you have developed, you have learned, created, will be used against African nation and against the vast majority of colonized people in the world. You don't want to do that. You don't want your creativity. You don't want your skills, your knowledge to be used against the people. You want your knowledge to be part of the struggle to raise the political, organizational levels of the people. So when you're university, there's nothing wrong to be known as a fighter for African people. There's nothing wrong with it, because you have to be aware that the United States government, the United States colonial society, is in permanent crisis, in a state of permanent crisis. The French colonial society, the French ruling class, the English ruling class, the English colonial society, they are all in a state of permanent crisis. African students have to be informed by that too. So our job is to take the opportunity they're in crisis so we can deepen that crisis, which means while you're organizing, you're working collectively with your friend to be smart in school, to pass your exam and so on, but you are working to bring everybody together to serve the needs, to serve the mandate of the revolution of Black people. And those mandates, you will find them in African People's Socialist Party. You have to find them reading the Sphere newspaper. You will find them being part of ADEP, you know, by being part of ADEP, because ADEP carries out the mandate of the Black nation, so we can recapture our skills. Is all the skills you have belong to the Black nation, and the Black nation must be the first and the main beneficiaries of those skills. That's kind of things you have to do as a student. And also, part of what you need to realize, and that's really critical, because being a student, it means no being opposed to the African working class. It doesn't mean that. Being a student does not mean you're enemy of African working class. Being a student does not mean that you are above the African working class. That's how we were educated. We were told, be somebody. And be somebody, it means what? Having jobs like white people, being in the government, and things like that. What does that mean, being African student? For example, if in the most African countries, over 60%, over 60% of the budget is consumed by cadres of the neo-colonial society, which means students who graduate, they become cadres to solve the problems, not for Black people to be free, but to solve the problems for colonizers and their accomplices of the African people bourgeoisie to maintain the Black people in colonization permanently. And that's how you get paid, because you are a cadre to maintain Black people in domination. That's not a good job. That's not a good career. That's not a good feeling. You go home every day, you look at your children, and the only job you do is to maintain the status quo. And that's what to be cadre under neocolonialism is. It doesn't matter if you see you're honest or not, because neocolonialism is a system of domination of Black people for the benefit of white nation, which is a colonial state. It was born like that. And it can only maintain itself as a colonial state, stealing the resources of Black people and other colonized people around the world. So what I'm trying to say, you have to go back to the roots, to the foundation, to the source of power, where the wealth that mesmerizes everybody comes from. The wealth you see around you is generated by the working class, by the African working class and other colonized working class people. But the African working class, as I said, is the cornerstone of that. You have to go to them, go back to them, live with them. They need you, and you also need them. For you to be a student, to talk tall, to stand tall, to have dignity, you must be part of a free nation. Just like the Chinese student, the Indian student, they talk tall because they know whatever they do is to benefit their nation. They are clear on that. But whatever we do is to serve corporations, parasitic corporations, which are hostile to Black life. They are opposed to any dignity, any dignified Black life. So you have to go back to the African working class. That's where everything happens. That's where everything we want to do to succeed, it has to start from the people, from the African working class. And when we say from the African working class, you understand that we live in a modern world. And if we organize ourselves very well, we have everything we need to build a modern Africa, a modern African nation, where the needs of all Black people on the planet will be fulfilled and satisfied. Africa has everything you need. When I say everything, Africa has everything. I will just take some examples, just very quickly. Taking this from Black Africa, this is a book by Sheikh Diop, The Economic and Cultural Basis for a Federated State. And you can't industrialize Africa without energy. You can't have a modern economy without energy. And Africa has all the potential energies you need in the world. Hydraulic energy, Africa has it in abundance. Just all the rivers you have in Africa is enough to produce electricity to electrify the whole of Africa. If you talk about the solar energy, just to give you an example, each square kilometer on which the sun shines each day gets a quantity of energy equivalent to that of an ordinary atomic bomb. Hope you all heard what I just read. Each square kilometer on which the sun shines each day gets a quantity of energy equivalent to that of an ordinary atomic bomb. You know, the sun shines all over Africa every day. In Africa, it's bigger than the United States and Canada and China combined. Can you see the level of energy the African student, African engineers have to master so we can produce electricity? Everything is there. So it's just the solar energy. You take the atomic energy coming from uranium. France gets 75% of its electricity from uranium, and over 50% of uranium used in France comes from Niger in Africa. That's why there's war in Mali. Mali also has uranium, and France want to keep that uranium for itself. That's your uranium. That's our uranium. So we can produce electricity for ourselves. So we have the atomic energy, at least the foundation of it. So you have the wind energy, the thermal energy of the seas. Think of Africa as a massive island, the sea all around us. So we can produce electricity from the thermal energy of the sea. We got the tidal energy. We've got the global heat energy. We have the volcanic thermal energy. We have the geothermal energy. And I don't even talk about the oil and the gas, things like that, how they can be transformed, how the coal can be transformed to produce energy. But everywhere in Africa, we suffer from lack of energy. It's unbelievable. From South Africa to Nigeria, there are problems every single day. And we have to buy generators from English or Chinese. So basically, they loot us with our oil, all our minerals, and then sell to us generators that we don't really need because we have all the natural potential to electrify Africa. So these are just in terms of energy, and in terms of industrialization. I'll just give one example and I'll stop here. Think of the forests from Senegal, Casamance, to South Africa, particularly up to Angola, where you have the equatorial forest, Central Africa, probably Cameroon, the Congo Basin. All the plants we need to make modern top medicine is there. Everything you need is there. Everything we need is there. But the African ruling class, they spend every year $6 billion to get treatment abroad in Singapore, in England, United States. So in 10 years, that's $60 billion spent. That's our money. That's money to fund the research you can do. That's money to build pharmacies. That's money. I can't really, there are so many things we can say. Africa has a future, a brilliant future. But we have to free Africa. We have to organize. We have to unite all African students, put all our brains together, from Canada to South of America, from the Caribbean to Europe, from North Africa to South Africa, throughout the island in the Pacific. We have to organize Black people. We have to win our students to be the vanguard student, the student who are leading they are taking the fight universities to take the best of African students back to revolutionary struggle where they belong, so they can unite with the African working class and launch the offensive that will bring freedom and Black power to all Black people on the planet and end once for all this parasitic capitalist colonialist system that does not deserve to exist even for 1 second. And this is in your hand. And we want that to be in your brain. And we want you to be an active organizer for Black freedom. A vanguard student is a student that fights for Black power and unification of the Black nation, that's fighting to recapture our future. Be that student. Be that student. Be the vanguard student. That's basically the presentation I want to do. I know I have the what do you call it? The documents I wrote, but start just from the observation I've done in the last couple of days. That's where I started from. But if there's a need for me to go through the document, I'll do so. But I would like to stop here. I'm not sure if I exceeded my time or not. But I just want to appreciate the opportunity to be on this platform and talk about the role of African student and and have a discussion with all those who are present here, so we can go forward and build a revolutionary uh, uh, movement with student, African student, and then we can, you know, get our freedom. So thank you so much, and I will definitely stop here. Or
Uhuru, Secretary General Lazy, Kinshasa, thank you so much for that incredible presentation. I know people must have questions. I want you to really write down your question, put it in the chat, send it to info@developmentforafrica.org if you prefer to do it that way. We're going to get to your questions after the presentations have been made. I really want to just recap some of the really powerful things that I think Is Sheila Lazy offered us in his presentation. I think one of the things that presentation helped us to understand is that we cannot just be students in general. We can't just be intellectuals or professionals in general, that we have the responsibility as African students, as African intellectuals, as African professionals, to be the vanguard, to be the vanguard of the African revolution that's going to destroy this parasitic relationship that has been imposed on African people for more than 600 years, that will help to usher in a future of a modern industry and technology that will not only allow the genius of African people to be fully opened up, but that will create as a consequence the high standard of living that African people everywhere around the world need, that we deserve, and that we can have. So I just really want to appreciate that. Also reminding us that we have to redefine what success means. We can't be looking for success under imperialism. That's imperialist success at the expense of African people. The skills that we have don't belong to us as individuals. We have to remind ourselves that success should be determined by where we are as a people in the process of recapturing the ability for us to be self-governing. That's what success should look like, what role we've played in that process. So I just really want to appreciate Secretary General Lazy. Looking forward to hearing your questions. I want to invite you, if you are interested in becoming a member of APDEP, we're going to have more of a call to join later, but you can do that by going to developmentforafrica.org/membership, or you can register your interest in the chat. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And I want to go ahead and transition now to our next presenter, Comrade Dr. Matsumela Odom, who is going to give his presentation on the role of African intellectuals. And he's going to also speak specifically to the question of African students as well. So we want to welcome Dr. Matsumela Odom, and thank you very much for being a part of this presentation. Uhuru.
All right, Uhuru, everybody, Uhuru. Once again, this is I'm Dr. Matsumela Odom. Some people know me as Dr. Michael Odom. So I want to thank everybody for being here. If it's okay, Chiwa and everybody, I'll just pull up my my PowerPoint and share it with you all. I think I got about 15 minutes, so I'll try to keep within that. Overall, really what I want us to really think about is just exactly that, some practical ways through which us have, you all as students can get involved in this struggle. Take you all a little bit through even my own journey, looking at myself and stuff like that. I know that a lot of reasons why African students, go to college is their goal is to produce things and be a benefit to the development of African society globally, from the communities in which they might come from, if they're from the U.S. or Africa or something, or Africa or the Caribbean. or something like that. However, we also recognize the what happened, right? One of the things we'll talk about is that in the 1960s, there were students who attempted to lead some form of anti-colonial struggles, even on college campuses, with the demanding of control of education in their communities that they came from. They took some of those struggles to the college campuses as well, as a part of this, but it was co-opted, right? It was co-opted for a variety of different reasons. At the end of the day, many people waged Black Power struggles, but in those Black Power struggles, they were at the end of the day still fights for inclusion into the colonial system of education, as opposed to African self-determination and other things like that. So as we'll see in places like San Francisco State, you have oftentimes very violent struggles and confrontations between African students and the police and the state apparatus. But in the result, what we get is oftentimes, departments led by African intellectuals and things like that who do not have a material interest in changing the circumstance of African people worldwide. So I want to just look at some of these things. This is really developed by some of the ideas brought to me. There's a couple different images here, which I think relate. First, to the left, you have really a person who is in the same discipline of study that I am, Walter Rodney, really a person who I've always tried to aspire to be like. Walter Rodney was a historian, but Walter Rodney was a African working class intellectual. At every point in his education, it was very clear that Walter Rodney wanted to produce work that was about directing people towards African liberation. So I mean, I don't know if any of his books were published by quote unquote university presses. If you go to one of his earliest books, it's a book called Groundings with My Brothers. It's very clear that he was actually waging a political struggle against neo-colonial government in Jamaica and the University of West Indies, so much to extent that but he had the students behind him. He had the Rastas behind him. He had the African working class behind him, so much to where he eventually is exiled from Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean. He was actually originally from Guyana, but he ends up over in Tanzania, where his work at the University of Dar es Salaam is an important challenge to neo-colonialism there, in which he challenged the government of Julius Nyerere and others. We have also this image. It's a Black Panther image from the 1960s on the revolutionary student. This image here created by what's his name? Emory Douglas. And then, of course, I want to lift up really the prime example of really a revolutionary student. Now, this is an African martyr. This is a founder of the African People's Socialist Party, Comrade Katura Carey, who was a student at the University of Florida in Gainesville, who understood the necessity of making sure what's produced, this sort of African intellectual power is returned back to the historical struggle of the African working class. So it's her and her student group that had formed at the University of Florida that becomes a crucial organization, one of the three organizations that merged in 1972 to become the African People's Socialist Party. And I really salute both Walter Rodney and Katura Carey, because they sacrificed, right? They lost the jobs, right, in opposition to colonialism from their positions as intellectuals, as educators. They waged anti-colonial struggles against colonial powers as well as neo-colonial powers. And that really is something that like we have to think about. So just some of the things we'll think about is the history of student organization on campus, off campus, intellectual production, writing, things like that that can play a role in this struggle. Also, one reason why I think campus is really important, what campus struggles can be important is if we use it correctly, is it can show way it can provide principled struggles through which Africans and indigenous people can wage the struggle. I remember when I was an undergrad, you know, the solidarity between African and indigenous people. We're talking about Spanish-speaking indigenous people. Some people might call Mexicans or El Salvadorans or something like that, as well as indigenous people born on this side of the colonial border and things like that. But also sort of membership in revolutionary organizations, really as the way forward. So I want to salute Chairman Omar Yeshitela. I want to also salute Deputy Chair Onizane Yeshitela, as well as President Colin Bailly of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. Just a little bit of story about me, myself. This is me, Matsumela Odom, born and raised in Long Beach, California. I was a high school football player. This is me, I think sophomore year in high school, on the left at a weightlifting competition. And then this is me. Most of these pictures are me while I was an undergraduate as a football player. And then much more recent picture of me. And sort of, you know, my background might be a lot similar to most people, you know, African working class student. Who found success in something like sports, which eventually drove me to go to college to continue that career. I grew up at a time in Long Beach, California, where originally my original thoughts was that I was going to be more than likely like working at the shipyard. Everybody in my family had worked at the shipyard. I remember they were either welders or electricians. So I remember being a middle school or something like that, and picking up electrician's book and thinking, like, shoot, I don't really want to be an electrician, but my uncles is all electricians. I guess I'm gonna have to be an electrician and stuff like that. But they closed down all the shipyards, right? They closed down the shipyards. I got a little bit better at football, and I ended up on college. But what my mom always says is that, you know, she sent Kunta Kinte to college, and Kunta Kinte graduated, right? She didn't want them to turn me into Toby. And that's really a signifier of the moment through which I came of age. You know, clearly in the 80s and the early 90s when I came of age. And there was, you know, so basically what she's saying is that, you know, she wanted to send her working class son to college, but she did not want college to turn me into an enemy of the African working class, a petty bourgeois sellout of sorts. But as a deputy, as Secretary General Loaizi Kinshasa notes, right, this is actually a very often a struggle that even African working class students like myself have to contend with, because at every single moment, what you are confronted with is the idea that you're exceptional. And even the poorer you grew up, the more and more you're being awarded for your own exceptional nature as a young man, you know, or as a young student. So that's what we going to have to challenge even in this talk, because, you know, every single election season, as we'll talk about, I mean, every single graduation season, you see all these posts, hashtag Black excellence, hashtag Black excellence, really associating excellence with ascendancy through a colonial structure, not excellence through a person's commitment towards the liberation of all African people. right? And to me, this is the sort of colonial contradiction in which we're looking at, right? So the first thing we have to do is disaggregate what we think of as education and higher education and intellectual growth from colonialism, right? And you got some people say, well, that's why I send my kids to HBCUs. HBCUs were formed for the exact same reason as the PWIs, the historically Black colleges and universities, were formed for the exact same reasons as the predominantly white institutes, just like Secretary General Loizy Kinshasa talked about, is for the reproduction of value for the colonial society, right? That is the origin of these centers of colonial education. Now, generally, what they're saying when you need to send your kid to HBCU or something like that, what they're generally saying is much more oftentimes subjective things, right? It feels better to be around Black people. At least when you walk into a class, you'll have a teacher who views you as a human and things like that. But that's not even for certain. But when we take a step back and we understand that higher education itself was a crucial tool in the administration of colonialism, we can then begin to think about anti-colonial passages, because, like I said, whether it be Fort Hare University in South Africa, Howard University, Morehouse, whatever it is here in North America, we know that the expressive goal of these places was to reproduce an international African middle class, through which can be the colonial neo-colonial administrators, even long before the transition from former colonialism to neo-colonial rule in Africa and things. This is also one reason why throughout Africa right now we see a lack of investment in actually higher education amongst the neo-colonial class. So this takes us to the main contradiction we're looking at here, right? W.B. Du Bois and his talented tenthism or Negro exceptionalism, which he and the Black petty bourgeois class had put together. In this talented tenth statement, he says, the talented tenth of Negro race must be leaders of thought and missionaries of culture among people. No other can do this work, and Negro colleges must train them. The Negro race, like all other races, is to be saved by its exceptional men, right? So in this, we see this contradiction, and first and foremost, an acceptance of a colonial understanding and the colonial system itself, and this idea that even African colleges will be used to reproduce this colonial structure, placing the African intellectuals above them. And like I said, we see this every election, every graduation season, right? We see this sort of hashtag Black excellence emerge, in which African students feel it necessary to define themselves against the African working class. You might see some brothers with a do-rag on, and then he has a cap and gown in the other image, and then he'll say something like, oh, you thought I was this, but I'm really like this, or something like that. But these images themselves, reinforce this colonial understanding of success, right? Defining nothing about this is about producing an African intellectual class, a group of African intellectuals in service to the African middle class, right? I'm sorry, to the African working class, which brings us back to where we started, and especially this notion of class suicide put forward by people like Amilcar Cabral, put forward by people like Walter Rodney, put forward by people like Keturah Carey, but also living in the work of the All African Peoples Development and Empowerment Project. This understanding that the skills learned on colleges with African students should be placed in service of the African community, right? And African students must not see themselves as departed from the communities from which they came, but nevertheless, everything that they earned to give them back. Now, as an outgrowth really of this new Negroism and exceptionalism, talent, and tenthism really became this effort in creating college organizations to reinforce this exceptionalism. The best example of this is going to be the Black fraternities and sororities, most of which emerged really embracing this idea of talented tenthism, and many still embrace this talented tenthism all the way until now, right? I mean, you can see it in how people walk around, you know, bow ties and all this suits, and be 95 degrees and people walking around with bow ties and suits and stuff like that on campus, right? Really sort of reinforcing this idea. Now, something that I do want to acknowledge is that a lot of African students are drawn to these organizations. I myself, when I was in college, joined one of these organizations, Phi Beta Sigma, largely because people like Huey P. Newton, who you see on the right, or that's James Foreman at the top, or Kwame Nkrumah at the bottom had joined these organizations. But the point to make is that not a single one of these people made their historical marks on a struggle for African liberation as members of these organizations, right? They actually made them consciously moving against the petty bourgeois and Black exceptionalism that many of these organizations are founded on. And Huey P. Newton actually talks about this sort of stuff in his book, Revolutionary Suicide. So in the 1960s, we actually saw a dip of membership in these organizations as students, as you see here at San Francisco State and other places, actually wage struggle, physical struggle, or sometimes even armed struggle against the campuses in which they were at, in an attempt to try to win some sort of space for the promotion of, you know, Black revolutionary ideas and stuff like that. As we see in this image right here to the right, this is actually an image in which, like we said, sort of a violent struggle emerged at San Francisco State in I want to say this is 1968. So it's very clear that African students themselves are seeing the campus as a place of struggle. This is the same time that Walter Rodney is kicked out of the University of the West Indies for trying to wage this sort of struggle as well. Now the problem emerges is in the colonial response to this moment, right? We have to be building dual and contending power, and institutions like ABDEP represent that dual and contending power of African intellectual power and capability, right? We have to be building dual and contending power. What happens is you got people who wage these struggles. Even I know at Cornell University, students even took arms on campus and things like that, and were in standoffs against the police and things like that. But nevertheless, when they won things, the power just went to new forms of the Black petty bourgeoisie, who might use certain levels of, say, pro-Black rhetoric and deeply underscoring the contradictions of Pan-Africanism and stuff like that. But they won. So you got African working class students going to campus fighting for these things, and then these just become victories for the Black petty bourgeoisie, almost never placing the victories that they've won on campus into service of the African working class. So here in California, you got things like the Black Student Unions, you got the African Black Coalition. The point I think is sort of we need spaces of Black power on campus, but not just Black power. We need to bring African internationalism to those spaces, no matter where you're at. No matter where you're at, if you're in a Bible group, bring African internationalism to it. If you're a part of BSU, ABC, a fraternity, bring African internationalism to it. Challenge those contradictions through which people are living under. However, we also need to bring those skills to the public, bring those skills that you learn on the campus to the community. So one way through which I've even done it is in the creation of the Burning Spear study groups that we do in the movement, in which we simultaneously engage contemporary readings, but I use my skills as a trained historical archival researcher to dig deep into the Burning Spear newspaper. The Burning Spear is something that all you students should be reading. It's the oldest and longest lasting Black power newspaper. It's been in a print since 1969. So this is something that like I have done to try to bring those skills that I learned in service to the African nation. But also get involved, right? Get involved. Students, African students should get involved in the All African People's Development and Empowerment Project to overturn those contradictions that we see taking place. So like I said, I mean, hopefully what I did was I raised some ideas and sort of some stuff sort of emerged. I really wanted to use my story about how I got to where I am right now. And once again, I mean, it's a conscious decision. It's not an easy road when you want to be an anti-colonial educator. You tend to, you're going to have far more workload. You're going to end up taking jobs that make you closer to the people and stuff like that. I mean, I have no qualms with saying I teach 3 times the amount of classes to survive than a full-time tenured professor, but it allows me to do the work that I would like to do with students as well as in the community to uplift the African community globally and stuff like that. So hopefully some of these things really sort of raise some questions for you all, and we can have some of those conversations in the Q&A segment.
Uhuru, Comrade Dr. Matsumela Odom, thank you so much for that great presentation. I really want to, appreciate you challenging. I think you kind of built on what Is Sheila Lazy opened up in terms of really challenging the idea of what excellence really is, what really, how we should define Black excellence or African excellence. Challenging the idea of some kind of talented tent, some kind of elite class of African people who will somehow be the saviors of African people, when in fact what we've seen is that those who would probably see themselves as a talented tenth have been actively working to maintain the colonial domination of African people by turning their skills over directly to the colonialists. And I think that we have a great basis for I think what can be an excellent discussion with everybody who's here today. And we're going to really let people know that in just a few minutes, you'll be able to ask your questions. Right now, we want to bring up our sister and comrade, Kundai Bajiji Kai, who is the APDEP Volunteer and Membership Coordinator. So she can tell you how you can join the All African People's Development and Empowerment Project, how you can volunteer with us. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions. So I want to welcome Sister Kundai to give us that call for volunteering and membership.
Uhuru. Uhuru, everybody. Let's see. Here we go. Uhuru, everybody. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. And I really want to appreciate my direct leadership, Dr. Aisha Fields, for hosting this event tonight, and Comrade Michelle as an APDET member for producing this, and our guests. We had some really, really dynamic presentations from the Secretary General of the African Socialist International, Lazy Kinshasa, and as well as the MPDOM Vice President, Matsumela, Comrade Dr. Matsumela. So yeah, I just really appreciate the presentations and the conversation that we've had thus far. And so again, my name is Kundai, and I am the membership coordinator and volunteer coordinator for APDET. And today's webinar is a fundraiser also for our Project Black Unk, which we didn't talk a whole lot about our programs, but we do have an international COVID-19 telehealth program where African people around the world, anybody can make a free appointment with our COVID-19 telehealth program, but obviously we target the Black community. And so we encourage those who are participating in tonight's webinar to help us reach our goal of raising $300 towards our Project Black Unk telehealth program, which is a very important program because nobody's going to take care of the African community around the question of COVID-19, but the Black community. So we want everybody who's able to contribute to that. And you can do that by going to developmentforafrica.org/donate, developmentforafrica.org/donate. And one of our moderators has already put it in the comment section. And then let's see. So, and APDEP is, in addition to our COVID-19 telehealth program, the telehealth program is also developing a way for us to provide mental health support to the Black community as well through this same program. So, so we want people to donate to that and make that possible. And then also, so our Project Black Unk telehealth program is a dual power healthcare program that is growing the capacity for African people to meet our own healthcare needs on our own terms. It is a concrete example of African people organizing ourselves to create, manage, and control our own healthcare system. That while we're limited at this time, it gives us the basis for meeting our physical and mental health care needs as a people. So again, you can make your donation by going to developmentforafrica.org/donate. You can also donate to our PayPal. You can go to paypal.me/APDEP. You can. We also have Cash App. You can Cash App our nonprofit account, which is the $AAPDEP. You can Cash App APDEP. And so, yes, so we want to let everybody know we really want, we have so many students on today, so I really want to salute all of the students that are on today, because you guys could be, and everyone else that is being, because you guys could be doing anything else right now, but you guys are tuned into this very, very important discussion and critical question in the Black community around African intellectuals. So we really appreciate your time today. And if you like what you heard, we want you to join this organization. You can join the All African Peoples Development and Empowerment Project, also known as APDEP. You can join us by going to developmentforafrica.org/membership if you are an African student. And we had a question earlier. If you are not an African student, we want you to join this movement as well. Secretary General Lazy Kinshasa spoke a little bit about our entire movement and solidarity. And so if you're not an African student, you can be a part of, we have solidarity committees. We have other places that non-Africans can still join because we're trying to build a revolution. We're trying to build a new social system. So anybody that wants to contribute to that, we want you to join this movement, the Uhuru movement. This is the movement for you. If you like what you heard today from our two presenters and our host, Dr. Aisha Fields, this is your organization. We want you to be a part of APDEP. We want you to join, again, the All African Peoples Development and Empowerment Project. And we have a student membership level. Our student membership level is $10. It's $10 to join as a student. Our other sustaining membership levels start at $25, and we go all the way up to $1,000, which is our lifetime membership level. All of our other membership levels are annual, so it's $10 annually, $25 annually. We have 360, all these 500 different membership levels depending on your, what. Some people are able to do more than others, and so your membership level doesn't determine your participation in the organization. You can do that whether you pay the $10 or you pay the Kwame Nkrumah $1,000 membership level. You can still participate as much as you would like to. We want active participation. And so the different areas that we will be calling on students to participate in is we have a Marcus Garvey Youth Program, which is there's a subcommittee for that. We have agricultural committee. We also have our Department of Information and Education. We also have our volunteering committee. And so there's so many different areas of APDEP that you can participate in. And again, we focus on healthcare, education, and agriculture. And so any skills that anybody viewing possesses, we have a place for you in our organization. And so we want you to join today. And if you're not sure just yet if you want to join, we want you to volunteer. We want you to volunteer your time. Whatever time that you can do weekly, we want you to volunteer. You can sign up to volunteer with us by going to our website, developmentforafrica.org/volunteer. There you can fill out a volunteer form for one of our different departments and committees. And if you're not sure and you just want to participate wherever is needed, then we want you to you can send us an email and just fill out any of our volunteer forms that are on that page. We also have an economic institutions and LA consignment, which people can volunteer in that area of work also. So again, we want everybody to join. We want you to join. We're not an organization that just does study. We study together. We organize. We have meetings. We do all those things. But we study and we have meetings in order to then put our boots on the ground and do the work. So we're not just calling on people to just join a study group, which is good too. But we want you to not just study. We want you to implement what you know into the real world. We want you to participate in liberation. We want you to participate in creating a new world, a world where African people and all people, oppressed people, don't have to suffer and live at the expense of and for the colonizers to live at the expense of all of us. So we want you to be a part of that, to join APDEP. Hear the call that was made to you today by Dr. Matsumela and Secretary General Lazy Kinshasa, and understand what your responsibility is as African intellectuals to the African nation, to the African revolution. You don't have to just sit on the sidelines and have all this knowledge in your head. You can create the programs. You can help lead us out of this chaos that we are experiencing. So we hope that you join today. You can also put it in the chat in the comments if you are interested in joining. Also, maybe you want a little bit more information. We'd be happy to talk with you and set up a meeting. So thank you guys so much for viewing. And I'm going to kick it back to our host and my direct leadership, Dr. Aisha Fields. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Comrade Kundai. Thank you so much for that call to action. I really appreciate it. And I'm hopeful that there are people who are participating in this webinar today who heard that call and who are prepared to answer it and join the Uhuru movement, join the All African Peoples Development and Empowerment Project. So now's the time for us to go ahead and open up for our questions that we have for our two panelists today. And I want to open with a question that is for Secretary General Lazy. And this was a question that was submitted by Comrade Tafari, who is based in occupied Azania, South Africa. And Comrade Tafari asked, well, he states first, this was brilliant. Can we call the neo-colonial intellectuals in universities African intellectuals? Is that an appropriate term for them, Is Sheila Lazy?
Yes, well, this is a good question. I appreciate that from Director Parry. They are African intellectuals. They are not African intellectual in the sense that they don't serve Africa. They don't serve the revolution. Their success depends on the status quo. Their success is against Africa. Their success serves primarily the entire system of neocolonialism, because who are those African intellectuals in Africa? They are generals in armed forces. They are in the governments. as ministers, they are preachers, and so on. Even there might be medical doctors, there might be engineers in the mine, but the mining interests, the mining companies themselves, what they do, they extract African wealth, transfer our wealth. So when you're an engineer, you helping to maintain the infrastructures of the mining companies to steal from Africa. That's not your job. If you're an African engineer, you have to solve the problems for Africa to be self-sufficient, for Africa to be independent, for Africa to make all the machinery ourselves. We don't depend on any foreign. But most importantly, you have to be, everything you do has to have an anti-colonial character. Everything to do for you to be legitimate has to have an anti-colonial character. If you're a medical doctor, your job is not to charge African people exorbitant sum of money. Many places in Africa, no money, you don't get treated. In some places in Africa, they keep you in jail, in hospital. They have jails in hospital until your family gets the money to pay the doctors. We don't want that. We want the doctors to serve the people. So the doctors have to be fighting for massive development of building hospitals, or training more nurses, for free healthcare. That's what should be the doctor for the people. I want to be a doctor for the people. I want a free healthcare for everybody. We want to make medicine ourselves. For example, for the product against COVID-19. I'm not sure it's from AstraZeneca or it's Pfizer. I don't remember, but it was an article in the New York Times. The same product that was sold to European Union is being sold to South Africa twice the amount of money. And the African intellectuals should oppose that. They should say, we need our money to fund our own research throughout Africa, bring all the best scientists so we can produce our own stuff, as opposed to buying some other people's stuff and things like that. So to be an African intellectual, you have to be part of anti-colonial struggle. If not, you are the imperialist intellectuals, the assimilados intellectuals, those who are maintaining the oppression of Africa. And we have to be very clear on that. That's the minimum. The minimum they have to be. But a real one has to be revolutionary. They have to be part of the revolutionary struggle, join the African Socialist Party, because they recognize, short of a revolution, there is no future for us. Short of a unification of Africa, there is no future for us. Short of a unification of the African nation, there is no future for us. Short of eradication of colonialism as the foundation of capitalist system, there is no future for that. That is an intellectual, regardless of his profession, as being an engineer or teachers or whatever. As long as they involve in the revolutionary struggle and the leadership of African internationalism, they are proper intellectual of the African working class. That's what they have to be. That's what the legitimacy comes from. So that's what we should say. Well,
can I add to that?
Sure.
Yeah, that's actually the point I wanted to make. One of the points I wanted to make is that one of the things that drove me to actually becoming a historian was two things. First off, like all the football coaches had majored in history in high school, so I was like, oh, okay, I'll be maybe I'll major in history. But I knew I had a good memory, right? I knew I had a good memory ever since I was young. A young kid, I knew I had a good memory. I knew I liked facts and stuff from the past. But that's something that, even if I would have ended up working at the shipyard like my uncles and them, I still would have been a student of history, right? I still would have been taking in facts and asking myself, how can I bring this back to the African nation? And we see this, right? I mean, the problem is when we're not building our own dual and contending power, this becomes the work of, I don't know, Africans who lead vacation Bible school or Sunday school class or something. I mean, I had a lady, her name was Viney Shellman. She was our teacher at our church when I was young, and she was brilliant. I mean, she knew everything. She could sit up there, but like, I don't even know if she graduated high school. I know that she worked basically as a she worked basically as like a daycare provider, because you don't really have to go to, but like she was our youth teacher, right? You know, and like, but the problem, the only sad thing about that is that like those skills weren't being put to full development of the African nation. It was being put to development of making me a better Christian as a young kid or something like that, right? But like, she didn't have to go get a PhD to do this. It's the other way around, right? I mean, my love for history and learning led me to that, but I want to just underscore the fact that yeah, the African intellectuals are the ones in service of the African nation, African liberation struggle, you know, under the guidance and of African internationalism. It's not just because you work on some campus or something like that. I would actually say if you really, really are fully an African intellectual, there's going to be a situation in which you probably won't have a job in an intellectual position, you know, you know, like I say, you won't have a job. I've lost jobs. I have, I actively choose not to go after many jobs and things like that because of the contradictions that involve. So I just want to say, just say that yeah, it's not because of the colonial occupation you do that makes you an African intellectual. It's about the service to the African nation.
Thank you for that response, Comrade Matsumela and Is Sheila Lazy. I think Kundai did somewhat speak to this question that also came in, but I think we might be able to say a little bit more about it. But a question was asked, if students who are not African, if all they can do is spread awareness of how Africans are not free, or is there more that they can do? So if we could speak to what people who are not African, students or otherwise, can do to be a part of this movement.
People are students, but not African students, but they're students. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you will always, when you're in university, you always have some people who are attracted to Africans because of the sportsmen or sportswomen of African have for music, things like that, or even for the beauty of Africa. I saw people who never been in Africa from Sri Lanka. They just mesmerized by Africa. So you have all those people who come to you, but your job is not to limit them or let them set the terms because they have their own needs, they have their own concerns. Usually, it's about what they saw with us. They love reggae, they love hip hop, things like that. That's not good enough because you have to remind yourself and everybody else you are unfree. So the starting point for you to be free and to win everybody you can win to be on your side, which means to be in solidarity with Africa, the solidarity with the African struggle, the solidarity with our movement, our party, with APDEP, and things like that. So that's what you do. You win them to do practical work. You win them basically to extend the program of African People's Studies Party into their community, if possible. Have access to resources, facilities, everything you identify, you can win them to do. If they are not white, if they say they are Indians, they are Sri Lanka or Chinese, things like that, you do that. But if they are like the traditional citizen or the citizens of the traditional oppressors like English, US, and French, you know that you can straight into solidarity, USM or something like that. You organize meetings, the USM, so they can be organized because what you're trying to do is have a USM in your campus if it's possible. On the city where you are, that could be one way of doing that. But brief, just to in short, the starting point has to be your freedom. The struggle, free black people, as opposed to what we have seen times and times again. It's just about jazz. It's just about they love the Caribbean so much. You go on holiday to the Caribbean, and I've seen all those things. It just no, we can't do that. Freedom has to be the starting point, and you can do a lot of things with them. They can sell books, banning spears, the chairman's books, you name it. We've got it's a lot of things they can do. They can go to the community and express real solidarity with us. That's all better we can say.
Uhuru, did you want to respond to that also, Dr. Matsumela? I wasn't sure if you were
Well, yeah,
heading that
sure.
way.
I mean, I really like what he said, because yeah, it's really moving the solidarity away from the subjective forms of solidarity, which is like just a cultural alignment. In many ways, the beauty of African internationalism is that it lets people know you know, you don't have to be Rachel Dolezal or Sean King, but to I don't know, that's petty, but but you don't have to be those people to like align with African. Nobody's even asked you to be less white. You know what I mean? You haven't, a person didn't choose to be born white, you know, but it is an understanding that in being born white, they're born into a colonizer nation. And as a part of that, to change the material relationship between that nation and the African nation. So it's a material move, right? It's not like the thing I love about the white comrades in the movement is it'll be somebody basic in hip hop. I'll be like, oh, you know this, that, and this, and they be like, oh no. But then they'll be like, oh, I remember this one time for 3 years we followed the Grateful Dead and we were selling Uhuru pies or something. I'm like, dang, y'all was really deadheads, you know? But but they said they followed the Grateful Dead on tour all throughout the U.S. selling Uhuru pies so that they could generate resources to bring back to the African nation, right? Which is a whole different level of like solidarity. That's not a level of solidarity through which sort of capitalism and colonialism teaches us, you know, and stuff like that. It teaches us, oh, you know, dating people on campus or hanging out in the dorms or something like that. And that's not what really Is Sheila Lazy was talking about. So I just wanted to say that as well. And then in places like San Diego, for example, you have revolutionary organizations such as Unión del Barrio. And Unión del Barrio, I mean, they lead on so many amazing fronts. They got something called the Association of Raza Educators, right? And our movement and their movement have been a fraternity link for almost 40 years, you know. Their Association of Raza Educators, their leadership in organizations such as the Mecha organization, the Chicano Student Organization, and stuff like that. I mean, just very important stuff through which, in many ways, in this education struggle, we can still learn from a lot of stuff that they've been doing to really turn their spaces of education into anti-colonial education. I was looking for this certificate that I have because as a kid, I went to a place called Academia Quinto Sol in Long Beach, California. It used to be called Escuelita de la Raza. It was a Chicano movement escuelita, and because it was a Chicano movement school, but they were anti-colonial in what they were teaching. It still sort of taught me a certain level of pride as an African person. Even the dances that we did this thing called ballet folklorico, and it was this thing called son jarocho or something like that, where like it was like African dance that they do in Mexico, you know, and stuff like that. But like, here's a school that I went to as in preschool, but it was a Chicano movement school, but it was a school because it was anti-colonial and how it was created. It taught me about being an anti-colonial African and stuff like that.
Uhuru, thank you.
I know there's lots of questions, so I need to make my answers a whole lot shorter.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, I appreciate that. And just to say one more thing on how people who are not Africans can participate, you can always volunteer with APDEP. So if you are another colonized, person of a colonized nation, or you are, you are a white person, you can also volunteer with APDEP. Again, you can do that by going to developmentforafrica.org/volunteer, complete our volunteer form, and then we can put you in an orientation, do a skills assessment, and get you to work. So lots of ways that you can participate in this movement as an African or a non-African. So we do have a couple more questions and we're nearing the end. So I want us to, if we can just keep our answers short so that we can finish all the questions that have been asked. we've got a question here that says, can you expand on the question of class and how this conversation and call to action is equally essential for the African poor and working class, not just intellectuals and professionals? I appreciate both panelists understanding that African or Black people are often raised and taught to be professionals and make money for white power, and how these are the lies we are fed in the class struggle. So great question. I want to open that up.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Who
The
asked
question of class is really fundamental. People have to understand that we are now in the era of white power in a black face. The White House with a black president. In the past, what we used to have in Africa, we had colonial governors. Basically, white man was a colonial governor in every colony, and they didn't hide it. They called us colonies. And in every government, Britain, France, Belgium, Spain, all these places, they have a minister of colonies. They had a department of colonies. So it was clear direct. But because of the struggles of the 60s, the crisis of imperialism deepened, and they realized it was impossible to maintain direct to white power on us. They had to come through us. They had to have a white power in the black face. But for that to happen, but they needed a social force whose success and interest does not require colonialism to be destroyed. It requires colonialism to be maintained, but differently. The white man is hiding. You don't see him, but you see mostly black faces doing everything. But if you scratch, just not even carefully, just if you scratch long enough, you will see that the economy of Africa has not changed. Africa used to produce for imperialist countries, we still producing for imperialist countries. Nothing has changed. We used to produce cocoa in Ghana and gold. We're still producing cocoa and Ghana, maybe with gas now and oil. We used to produce copper, uranium, you name it in the Congo. We're still doing the same thing. Everything, the armies, the generals, they're all trained by white power. So independence in Africa is, as I said in the beginning, is a myth. It's just the transfer of government, of the administration to African petty bourgeoisie, that class, which success depends on colonialism. That's all. So they represent a different class. Their interest is not the same as us, although they're still oppressed. When I say they're still oppressed, they don't take the great decision like the price of gold, what to do with the economy. No, the Europeans, white power controls Africa, but the African ruling class has submitted itself, has agreed to serve them in exchange of big salaries, prestige, houses, white women or white men, depending who they are, things like that. And they represent the African people with right. So if you attack the white power, they defend the white power. And if you attack them, white power defends them. And we are the working class whose independence under the leadership of African working class does not benefit us. Independence there is no progress for the working class. There is nothing to show for it if you're workers or peasants. But for the African people, there's so much to show. They have houses in New York. They have Cadillacs. They have Rolls Royce. They have limousines, and things like that. So class struggle, it means the African working class realizing that we are not free. Africa is not free. Africa is not united. A new struggle has to take place, but this time under the leadership of the African working class through its advanced detachment, which is called the African People's Socialist Party, through his own philosophy, which is African internationalism. That's the class struggle. Embrace African internationalism, join the African People's Socialist Party, fight for the United States of Africa, fight for black power, fight for the overthrow of parasitic capitalists. That is a class struggle. Fight for reparations, fight for solidarity of white people to be determined by us. So it's essentially through returning the stolen resources and taking the black power struggle into the white communities and things like that. So these are some of the things we can say what this class struggle really means today.
Uhuru and SG, just quickly, one of the things I'll add to that is also in the class question is a question of what we can call class position versus like class aspiration. And I think that's one of the things that I struggle with myself, right? Because of my upbringing, but then the job I work right now, like, okay, am I the African petty bourgeoisie, you know, and stuff like that. And but then just understanding the fact that, look, yeah, I mean, I've got a PhD. I work in a position in a position that's in a field that's petty bourgeois, and understanding that if the African petty bourgeoisie, if the African intellectual class, petty bourgeois intellectuals, are left to their own class interests, then they'll create structures that are only about their own class interests, right? And the interests of petty bourgeois, of the petty bourgeoisie. Now the question is of one's own aspirations, right? So how, you know, I'm a professor, but I don't aspire to that position. I aspire to the liberation of Africa and the leadership of the African working class. So I think that that's important, because we know that even as a working class, right? My mom said, you know, she don't want me basically go to school and be a sellout. But we know some people who's taught, you know, you gotta go to school because that's the only way you can do anything, and you gotta play the game so you could change the game and all sorts of stuff like that. And we know that that aspiration can be something that is something that's actively taught to the African working class, and that's one question that was posed to me that I shared, was this idea of difference between Pan-Africanism and African internationalism. We know for a fact that Pan-Africanists will say, you know, well, basically, as long as you pro-Black and whatever you do, that's good for the nation. So you could join the CIA and have a bunch of masks at your house and wear dashikis, and to them that's seen as pro-Black, right? In this sort of petty bourgeois neo-colonial politics, and African internationalists will say, no, of course not, right? You know what I mean? And things like that. But I know that you can deepen that. But I just, like I said, I've seen it because I've seen this, you know, that contradiction. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's helpful. And I think part of what's being I think part of what has to be maybe put out there more clearly, or maybe more directly, is the significance of the African working class. And I know that that's something, Is Sheila Lazy, that you speak to quite clearly in the piece that I'm hopeful everybody will read if you haven't already. And we put it in the chat, the role of African intellectuals in the world. I think everybody should read that. But you really open that piece up, speaking directly to the significance of the African working class and what role African intellectuals or students have to play under the leadership of the advanced detachment of the African working class if we are to be of any benefit to the African nation at all. Can you speak to that, Is Sheila Lazy?
Yeah, this is very important question, because, you know, in a situation of domination we are under now, those who are seen as educated, intellectual, successful, they're always a tiny minority. And so people are confused that to be an intellectual, you're going to be part of that minority. What they don't realize that everything comes from the production by the working class. All intellectual activities, their starting point is the activity of the laborer, of the worker, everything. In fact, it's said that civilization was like counting, writing, mathematics were invented by fishermen. There are more evidence, you know, to show that that was the case. But the point here is that with the industrialization of Africa, we will need a million and million and million of workers. And those workers, because we will not create a capitalist colonial society, we will create a socialist society. There will be the most educated working class you can find on the planet. We will not organize the way the bourgeoisie does. We will have time we spend in factories and time we spend studying. So the workers, so basically the artificial division between mental work and physical work will be broken. You do mental work, you also do physical work. We're not going to get you exhausted from can't see the sun until the sun goes down. You just working, working. You're so tired, you can't even open your eyes to read a book. No, you won't do that. You're going to have mental development. You're going to have the brainiest workers uh, doing workshops and so on. So continuous education to the point that the general level of intellectual will be so high because we have to produce airplanes, we have to produce submarines. It's not like now you go to school, you are like 16 years old, you're an African, you can't fix a watch, you can't fix a bike, you can't fix what you been doing in the school. No, we won't do that. I grew up and I know I grew up in the Congo. I know youngsters by the age of what 12, 13, young at 10, they were expert in making cars using wires, and they would design houses using IBM cards. Like architect, they never got any lesson in architecture. They never seen any architecture in their life. This is the working class kid, and I was mesmerized by that, and that was a culture. The only thing you need to do, give them some training, bring some science into that, and I will tell you these are the workers of the future. So when Africa is nationalized, scientific education for women, instead of doing all these hard-breaking jobs, pounding things, it's hard-breaking jobs. No, they will learn how to mechanize that. And the status of the working class will be maintained because we will not have the bourgeoisie. It will be a classless society. You're going to eat because you work. Everybody has to produce. Everybody will be paid according to the labor, the work they have produced in society. Not because you have a degree from Oxford or you pay 10, 20 times more. The unit salary of the president of Congo, Tshisekedi, is a $2 million. It's 2 million plus, something like that. And the outgoing president, the one before, because he's no longer president, he gets 60% of the salary of the current president. On top of that, everything's paid for. Cars, housing, everything's paid for. And salary of a doctor, $300. The teachers, $100. And the price of housing a month, just 2 bedroom, you pay $80. Nothing left in their pockets. Why? Because of the embourgeoisement of the society. Because the workers should not be paid. Free labor is still practiced in Africa and things like that by the corporations you have. So we go stop all that. So being a worker does not mean you're not an intellectual. So we're going to change all that. So the value of labor will be changed. We're not going to have a society where somebody's going to be paid 10 times than the other worker. No, we're going to bring all these almost to the same level, everyone according to their needs, everyone according to their abilities, and the education will make that the gap is narrowed because the ongoing education everybody will get. Science will no longer be something for the privileged, for the few. Science will be for everybody. Massification of science, technology everywhere. Everybody must have access to it. Television will not be just a place you come and watch, obscure things, alien films on that. No, it will be a place where science is there. Music, there's science in the music. People learn all that kind of stuff. There's science in drumming. All that will be made available to society. So it will be the highest quality of living that ever existed on the planet. So we have to look forward to the future, being a worker and producing for society, but also having science in your hands, as opposed to separated from science and be mesmerized by the few. They're talking on TV, you can't understand what they're saying. You can't do that. Yes, word.
Because just to second that real quick, Is Sheila Lazy, the work of Sheikh Anta Diop is so valuable because when you look at some of his readings, you realize at the point of colonialism, the colonization of Africa, we had that society, right? We had that society through which science and and knowledge was democratized throughout society. And that's the reason for the colonization of Africa, was that sort of advancement that we had. The reason why I say that is important because sometimes people, even in what they think is forwarding something that like is better for Africa, they fall into the lies of colonialism. That Africa was no colonialism underdeveloped Africa, right, and stuff like that. But instead, you know, at the point through which this was happening, Africa was was advanced, right? It was advanced, and it was Europe that was coming out of a series of centuries of infanticide and genocide and disease and stuff like that. So it's an assault on and yeah, so and it's even that logic that was placed into the Holocaust of African enslavement, right? You know, people, it wasn't just some snatch and grab. It was a theft of African labor and resources. You know, how can we take people from rice growing civilizations here to build the rice growing of South Carolina? To make the United States wealthy? How can we take African skills to make the United States wealthy and stuff like that? The reason why I say that is, yeah, so I just wanted to share that real quick, but hopefully we can answer a couple more questions.
Yeah, the only thing I can add to that, you know, from the past to the present, where we are now, one thing that didn't happen in the past was a consolidation of the African nation.
Mm.
That didn't happen in the past. So the project of the African Peaceful Studies Party, the mission, the mandate of the African working class is basically to consolidate the African nation. And that's why we need to have this new state, and the African working class, general level of science, technology, political, everything has to be raised, because we have to be the ruling class, and the ruling class has to be the class that has the know-how of everything through its advanced detachment, but also by having the foundation, the base that's always growing, all the time growing. That will make even the job of the party much easier, because your base is strong. If your base is not strong, if the working class you have to organize, they are demoralized, they are in all kind of a state of chaos, then the advanced detachment will suffer, because they will not always have what they need, because the masses can't go forward because they're not ready for you. So this is something the party, as we develop, we sorting out. But the point I'm trying to make is we want to consolidate the African nation, and that requires the African working class everywhere to be organized and to have access to science. And this is the beginning of ending that phenomenon we talk about, the split between the labor and the mental exercise, basically between being intellectual and being a laborer. The revolution under leadership of the party is the process, the beginning of it, to narrow that and eradicate that, so we can have just a stateless society where there is no difference between a laborer and someone who goes to university and things like that. Also, the difference between like the town, the people who live in rural areas, the senior stupid, as opposed to those who live in cities. It's the beginning of ending all that. Also ending the gaps between the Africans who live in the West against those who live in the East, or those who are in the United States versus those who are like in Africa. So all the gaps between us will be narrowed and eradicated as we build this movement. So that's what we call the students to join. That's where everything will be resolved.
Uhuru. Listen, we've been having such a dynamic conversation, very high level, but I think in many ways so easy to digest. And I'm hopeful that those who have been participating in this discussion, you know, have experienced it in this way. I want to ask one more question. I'm going to direct this to SG Lazy, and then we're going to have to close it out because we're nearing the end of the time that we have. So this last question, SG Lazy, can you expand on how wrong the conversation and discussion efforts about racism is versus colonialism? So much dialogue on campuses and in the media is about curing racism, but how can all African Indigenous students organize or create student-led groups, and how can the Uhuru movement help support students?
Uh, if you people want to understand African internationalism, the genius of Chairman Omar Sheila, this is one aspect that expresses the genius of our chairman. When we talk about questions unresolved by the Black Revolution in the 60s, now, the question of racism is one of them. White power wants us to fight against racism, as the chairman puts it beautifully, against ideas in the heads of white people. The starting point is not the ideas in the head of white people. The starting point is that we have to be free. We have to be a self-determining people. We have to control our destiny. And Africa is our homeland. We need to have our own economy so we can feed and clothe and house ourselves. That's the starting point. So to do that, you must have power. And if you're oppressed, it means somebody has power over you. That's why brother George Floyd said, I can't breathe because somebody has power over him. Africa can't develop, Black community can't develop because somebody has the neck on the knee on the neck of the Black community. So the question of power is just central. One way to look at it, look at the Chinese. Ask yourself, do Europeans love Chinese, or even they love Chinese? That's not the question. Can they harm Chinese? Can they bomb China? Can they do anything they want to do with China? Of course not. They cannot do it. Portugal used to mess with China, but Portugal cannot do it. Take it, COVID-19. Think about it. If COVID-19 originated in Nigeria, or Uganda or Congo, South Africa. Can you imagine the press? Can you imagine just imagine what a white press will be saying? But they don't carry warfare in the papers against China. They don't. You can't even say, you can't even know that it's start from China. Why? Power. China has power. As Malcolm X said, power only recognizes what? Power. So everybody knows that they can hurt Black people. You can slander Black people. You can slander Africa, and they do it 24 hours a day. You know that. You watch TV programs. They show all these Black youth, babies, whatever, drinking dirty water. Some white guy saying raise money to save, Muna in Africa. That's insulting us. That's just, it's every day. It's on the buses, ads on the TV, to the point you don't want your child or your children to see it, but you can't escape it from it. Why? They know the African president, they don't open their mouth. They don't say nothing. When did you see the last time the African president protested against anything? Against Africa? It doesn't happen. So the question of racism is not what we should be focusing on. It serves Democratic Party because it keeps white people in the center. It keeps the Democratic Party in the center because it keeps the Labour Party in England in center. If you raise reparations, you see the same people who are saying they're against racism that disappear because they want you to focus on something that doesn't require them to pay reparation or to act in practice for you to have power to empower the Black community. As long as the answer comes from them and benefits them or a handful of Africans in the community, because African opportunists, they agree, they unite to strike against racism because it means jobs for them, because they will say we don't have enough Africans on our executive board of Shell or Apple or ExxonMobil. Oh yes, that's true. We only have less than not 5%. Let's make it 1%. How many Africans can you bring in? Okay, they go to university, they get some. Now they can put pictures of Black faces all over the place to say yes, they are represented. No, those Black people represent the African people, not the African nation, not the African working class. So the question of fighting racism, how does he explain Africans in jails? Will they free all the Africans in prisons? No, there will no freedom, because the strike against racism does not deal with the consequences of colonialism. That it was war waged against the Black community to fill the jails, destroy the Black revolution, and things like that. So we should reject that. If the white people put reparations on the table, that's the starting point. No reparation is a waste of time, And if it's the Black people themselves, bring them to African People's Socialist Party. Fight for Black power. With power, racists will respect you. In fact, they will say they're not racist, because they see you called power. So yeah, let's have power, and then we can have this discussion. You know, with our power, it doesn't really, take us anywhere. Let's have power. Let's join us. Yeah. So we're welcome, right?
Uhuru and Sheila Lazy. Yes, so yeah, I just really, again, I want to thank Secretary General Lazy Kinshasa, Secretary General of the African Socialist International, based in London, England, born in the Congo, who has been an incredible leader in the African People's Socialist Party, helping to build the African Revolution around the world, throughout Africa, Europe, United States, and around the world. I really want to express deep appreciation for Comrade Dr. Matsumela Odom for his tremendous leadership as the people's professor, as somebody who is not just in classrooms talking a whole lot of talk, but who has been a part of building revolutionary mass organization around the world, helping to create the new world that he helps to provide a vision for. So I just really want to appreciate that so much. And I want to appreciate you, everybody who has stuck with us for this last 2 hours participating. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your donations. Thank you for your interest in volunteering or joining the All African People's Development and Empowerment Project. We want to remind everybody to check out our website, developmentforafrica.org, where you can not only join, volunteer, donate, but where you can find really important healthcare tips and protocols for minimizing your risk of COVID-19, where you can find financial resources and individuals for individuals and small businesses, where you can find African internationalist homeschooling resources, and more. We want to say that if you have skills that you want to turn over to the African Liberation Movement, this is the organization that you need to be a part of. Whether you are an African, another member of a colonized nation, or a member of the colonizer white population, the beauty of this movement is that there is a place for everybody. If you are an African intellectual who likes what you heard and you want to give your skills back to the Black community, again, go to developmentforafrica.org. It's not just for students, although we're making a special call to students. This is for anybody, no matter where you are in your career or in your life, that if you have skills that you want to turn over, again, this is the organization that you want to be a part of. We want to also urge people to continue to donate. All resources raised during tonight's webinar will go towards our Project Black Ankh telehealth program and will help our people during this time of COVID-19. This telehealth program has already provided free appointments with our African doctors who have turned their skills over to this process to offer free appointments online around the world. We've had appointments from various parts of Africa, Europe, and the United States, and we want to continue to offer this as a free program for African people around the world. And your donations today help us to continue to do that. So again, this is the APDEP Ask the Doctors, a monthly webinar organized by the All African People's Development and Empowerment Project. I want to thank you again, everybody, so much for joining us. I hope that you can see the importance of this discussion. But more than that, I hope that you can see the role that you will play in contributing to the future that was laid out in this webinar, to the future of a Black power future where African people have control over our resources, our land, our labor, and our skills. So thank you again, everybody. And we hope to see you next time on our next Ask the Doctors series. Uhuru, and salute Secretary General Lazy and Comrade Dr. Matsumela Odom. Uhuru, everyone.
The Ask the Doctor series was developed in June 2020 to serve as one of the strategies to give the African nation access to learn from African medical professionals, intellectuals, activists, and revolutionary organizers about healthcare issues confronting the African nation. The Ask the Doctor series carries the goal of winning and building relationships with doctors, scientists, educators, and professionals in various fields to return their skills and make their expertise available to all African people. This series also serves as a monthly fundraiser and membership drive to help raise funds and resources for APDEP's Project Black Ankh's International COVID-19 Telehealth Program. To make a free telehealth appointment, go to www.developmentforafrica.org/telehealth.